Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Matthews, Community Outreach Director for AARP Tennessee. Today is our second session of our four-part series called A Caregiver's Guide, Dealing with Dementia. And today's discussion is dealing with dementia behaviors. So during today's discussion, if you have any questions, please utilize the chat box. We're excited and blessed to have Lori Bishop with us today. And so Lori is a graduate of Auburn University, and by trade, she is a certified financial planner. She and her husband, Mike, have a firm in Alcoa, Tennessee, where they help guide families through the maze of decisions they face as caregivers. In 2020, they formed the Caregiver Superhero Society, a nonprofit that focuses on educating and supporting dementia caregivers. Like many of you, Lori is a dementia caregiver. Her passion for helping caregivers comes from being a caregiver for her parents since 2015, both diagnosed with dementia. Her deep involvement in the caregiver community led her to her appointment as a certified trainer with the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving since 2018. It is in that capacity that she comes to us today. So Lori, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, we're going to talk about dementia behaviors today. So let me share my screen here. All right, Tracy, am I up and running?
You're up and running.
Okay, thank you. Well, hi, everybody. I want to thank AARP for the invitation to talk with you today. And Tracy shared my story a bit. I want to show you, oops. Okay, here we go. Now I'm on track. Thanks for your patience. This is a picture of my dad and I. This was probably 2016 when he, shortly before that, had dropped into a deep depression. There's a smile on his face here, but he was very much not like himself. He kind of went in 2 weeks from being a very outgoing person to being very quiet and withdrawn. He was eventually diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. But that's Dad. My mom also has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, earlier level, but so I care for both of them. This is a quote by Rosalind Carter. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who need a caregiver. So that's a big community of people and pretty much covers everybody. The material today that we're talking about is coming from a workbook called Dealing with Dementia, a Caregiver's Guide. And I do workshops on that. AARP has plans to offer that throughout the state of Tennessee, and I'm happy to be doing that with them. So you're going to see just a snippet of what we cover in the workshop today. And we're talking about dementia behavior. So we're not going to be able to cover all dementia behaviors. We're going to cover some of the major ones. But don't dismiss behaviors that are troubling as just part of the disease. There could be other causes that can be corrected, like a urinary tract infection or medication side effects. People living with dementia lose their ability to fully understand and use words to describe their feelings. So sometimes acting out is the only way they have to express that something's wrong. So what I want to encourage you to do today is take time to figure out what they're trying to tell you. And in doing that, you can help reduce those dementia behaviors. So let's start with agitation and aggression. And there's some questions, that I ask people. Has your loved one paced around the house night and day? Are they starting to cry with no apparent reason? Is there more violent behavior? Are they kicking or cursing you or hitting or throwing things? It happens in a lot of cases. Frontotemporal dementia, that's one of the key indicators of that, is a change in behavior from being a calm person to being very aggressive. But blame the dementia, not your loved one. Sometimes they can't help it. Most of the time they can't help it. There are people who had that tendency before dementia, but a lot of times it's a change in personality. So let's talk first about causes. And we want to rule out some causes so that we can kind of get down to to the root reason. One could be physical discomfort. They could be hurting somehow. They might be in pain. They might, have an illness, something that you don't necessarily see, and they don't know how to communicate that. They just don't feel good. So something could easily trigger that. Another would be lack of sleep or exhaustion, all that wandering around through the night, or just, having trouble sleeping in general can lead to that being a problem. It's just like the rest of us. If we go without sleep for a long time, we don't feel good, we might not be in the greatest mood as well. So you have to think about it that way. They just can't say that. Some of the agitation aggression may be a side effect of a medication. Reverse of that, we'll talk about some things in a while, but medication can correct some of these things as well. There may be confusion that they have due to vision or hearing impairment. You might be saying something to them, but they can't hear you correctly. They might hear something other than what you said, or they just might not be able to see and get frustrated in that situation. So triggers, recognize what triggers might be. They might have problems communicating what they need. And there are ways people have handled that by having picture books that show, that they need to go to the bathroom or they want to see somebody, and they're able to point out things that they need if they can't communicate any other way. The inability to understand what you're saying or what other people are saying, especially if people are talking at the same time. It's very difficult for them to process multiple sounds like that at one time. They might be picking up on your fear or your stress. Similar to children. It's very similar in that if you act afraid, your child's going to be afraid. If you're acting fearful, they're going to pick up on that. A sudden change of routine might be a trigger. If they're used to doing things in a certain order each day, and all of a sudden you have company and there are people in the house, and you've changed when you eat, and you've changed where you're sitting, different things like that can be very disruptive to them and cause agitation or aggression. Loud noises, lawnmowers going outside, or a smoke alarm beep, or anything like that can really send them into a tailspin. Lighting changes where all of a sudden there are bright lights when there haven't been is a common one. Embarrassment, frustration, humiliation. I often sit with my parents and think, I hope I'm never in this situation and don't have to put my children through this. I know for my mother, my parents always had things under control, and that inability to have control is very frustrating to them. Constipation, hunger, thirst, those types of things. Back to, just things that make them uncomfortable. The common symptoms that might show you that they are getting to that state would be fidgeting. My dad twists his hands or pats on things, and that's one sign that we know he's getting very anxious about something. Talking loudly, yelling at somebody, or demanding attention. A lot of times people say that folks with dementia age backwards, and so when they're in that teenager stage, they behave like teenagers and they want things their way, and they can get very agitated. Insults, threats, profanity. They may talk to you, particularly a spouse or a child. Either of us are going to be very hurt by something that might be said. And we have to step back and remember that they're not thinking straight. Something's going on with them that's agitated them. And if we can figure out what that is, we can help them through it. Physical, hitting, biting, pinching, pulling hair, things like that, injuring themselves, We've had a person in the past whose loved one hit their head against the wall over and over, or where they're destroying property, throwing things, and all of that. So those are signs that you've got a problem in this area. So some tips. One, identify triggers and plan quality time and activities. What I'm saying by that is keeping agitation to a minimum. Do physical activity, do things that are enjoyable to them, control the lighting, make sure it's, not too bright for them or not too dark and where they can't see. If you're at a point where it's helpful, you might consider putting very clear signs on doors or things like that. A sign that says bathroom so that they don't get confused where they're going. You might put a sign on the door that says stop, if it's an exit. Clothing and undergarments that are easy to put on and take off is very helpful because they get frustrated. Their ambidextrous, their dexterity is not as good, and sometimes belts and things like that can be very frustrating. And temperature, paying attention to the temperature is very important as well. Healthy practices, just like the rest of us, helping them to eat well, stay hydrated, get exercise, sleep, those things are important. And you'll hear me say this over and over with all of these, the whole KISS, and we're not going to say what people usually say. We can say keep it super simple, but have an environment that is clutter-free, peaceful, cheerful. Don't expect them to do everything that they've done before. If they used to help chop things for dinner or do the dishes, maybe you reduce that to put the silverware in the silverware tray. Something that they can do easily that's not getting them frustrated. Don't overwhelm them with a lot of people or choices, activities, things like that. Think about going into a restaurant. We have a restaurant here. I'm in Maryville, Tennessee. There's a restaurant here that has, I think, about 60 different options for a hamburger on their menu. To take my dad in there, or even my mom at this point, and ask them to pick what they want to eat is very overwhelming. So instead, if we have dad out like that, which we don't take him out much anymore, but I got to the point where I didn't give him a menu. I'd say, hey, Dad, you liked the patty melt last time we were here. Do you want that again? And he's going to go with the easiest answer, which would be yes. Common answer is no to everything. But if he's given one choice or one or two choices, he can do that. Speak in short, direct sentences. In a very calm voice is a good thing. But if you start giving lots of instructions or having a lot of commentary, my dad used to say, you've used up all your words, which was a sign to me that I was talking too much, which happens in my family. So, and stay on schedule with daily routines. The other thing I would encourage you to do in all of these is to respect your loved one. It's really easy to be hurt or offended or angered by some of the behaviors that you'll see, but remember that they don't want to be in this place. They don't want to be incapacitated in the way they are. And hopefully at some point in your life, they have taken care of you in a respectful way. So we want to respect them. Also pick your battles. The things that seem important maybe are not that important. So ask yourself, does this really matter? It matters if it has to do with safety. If they are wanting to drive the car and they're not capable of driving the car anymore. Different things like that, they may get very agitated. The whole transportation, driving a car thing is we could do a whole hour on that. But if it's not safe for them to drive or to do what they're about to do, that's when you put your foot down. But in other cases, if they want to eat in their recliner versus the kitchen table, there's some things that you just have to let go. So anyway, moving on, steps to, hold on just a second. Tips on that. You want to identify triggers, plan the quality time, keep it simple, respect them, pick your battles, and lastly, think outside the box. What are different things that you can do that you've not done in the past, but would solve some of these problems? And we're going to go through a problem solving exercise a little bit later. So steps to decrease agitation. One is calm yourself, take a breath, relax, and speak as gently and as softly as you can. In public speaking, that's one thing I learned. If I drop my voice really low, people tend to listen to what I say at that moment. So same thing in a situation with a loved one. If they're yelling at you, instead of yelling back, say something very soft. My mom has yelled at me on the phone before, and I've just said, "Mom, what you're saying to me is not fair, and I'm going to hang up now, and I will talk to you later." You can do that. You don't have to sit and take it, but try to be gentle and calm. Back off. If they are agitated, stay a safe distance. To the lady with the cane in the picture earlier, you might get hit with a cane. You might have something thrown at you, and there are all kinds of stories. I won't go through war stories with you, but I know a lot of caregivers who deal with a lot of violent behavior, and that you don't want to go in close to them at that point in time. Take his or her side. You want your face to read that you're concerned, that you're sympathetic. If you go in laughing at them or being super cheerful and denying their feelings, that can escalate the problem and really send them into a tailspin. So let them know that you understand you're their ally. You're not their enemy. When you can, speak to them at eye level. Get them to look in your eyes, make eye contact, and be very calm, and ask them, what do they need? Or are they hurting? What can you get them? Just try to get them to calm down. Breathing together works. A real dramatic, Dad, let's take a deep breath, and then inhale and exhale, so that they kind of follow your lead. Don't tell them, take a deep breath. Just have them do it with you. And lastly, soothe and protect them. If it's possible, hold their hand, give them a hug, reassure them that you're on their side, but stay in their reality. If they're hallucinating, don't say snap out of it. I mean, you want to stay there with them. If they're afraid, sit beside them and say, I'm going to take care of you. I'm here for you. And I would encourage you to take notes, keep a journal, start looking for patterns. That will help you figure out how to deal with some of these behaviors. Have a safety plan to get out of danger. There have been some, when someone thinks somebody's an intruder, and there's a gun in the house. We don't recommend that. There are a lot of situations where you need to think quickly and take yourself out of a situation. So take a deep breath. That's always the best thing to do. It's an instant grounder for us. Call for immediate help. Now that may be you call a neighbor or you call 911, but if the situation is escalating, don't wait till it goes, very far before you get somebody in to help you a little bit. Find a safe place for yourself or for your loved one. If they're in a room that you can shut the door and let them calm down by themselves, that's great. If they are agitated and coming after you, find a safe place for yourself. Because if they can't get to you, that's kind of the goal. Attempt to calm them if possible, back with the things that we talked about a minute ago, and know what causes them to panic. Kind of start that, taking notes and keeping a journal. if you know what sends them into an agitated state, try to avoid that. And know when personal restraint is necessary. If they're going to harm themselves or harm someone else, that sounds horrible, but sometimes you have to do that. Restrain them in some way, or call 911 and they will restrain them. So final thoughts on agitation and aggression. Never argue with a person with dementia. This is a saying that I want you to remember. Don't correct, redirect. So anytime they're talking crazy things, or saying the same thing over and over and over, in so many behaviors with dementia, we want to correct them and say, that's not right, or no, you don't remember that correctly. Instead, just don't correct them, just move on to another subject. It could be singing, it could be, oh, let's go outside and take a walk, but try not to correct them. Whatever it takes, stay on their side and focus on helping them feel safe and understood. They're afraid a lot of times, and that comes out in aggression. Your loved one isn't trying to give you a hard time. They are having a hard time. Sometimes that's hard to remember because we take things very personally, but you have to step back and think about that's not the person that you're used to dealing with. All right. We're going to do questions at the end so we can come back to that later, but I wanted to talk briefly about bathing and personal hygiene. Just real quickly, because I know that is something people deal with quite a bit. Possible reasons why somebody might not take a shower or do some of the things that they've done before. It could be embarrassment. It could be that they don't want to be naked in front of somebody, even if it's their spouse. It could be physical impairments. It could be they hurt, that they're dizzy, that they have vision or hearing issues. My dad has some vertigo issues, and he's fallen several times in the bathroom on the tile and gotten hurt. So it's understandable that there's fear going into that. Discomfort. A lot of people talk about this where their loved one doesn't want to take a shower. But if you can imagine how thin some of their skin is, if they fall, that's the first thing that happens is they tear their skin. Imagine a shower beating down on your skin if your skin is that thin. The temperature of the water, the temperature of the room, all kinds of things like that contribute. It is just not a pleasurable experience for them, and so they don't want to do that. Memory loss, they could think they took a shower that morning. And so you can sit and argue all day long, no, you didn't. You need a shower now, but that's not going to change their memory of that. In some situations, just a childlike rebellion. They don't want to take a shower for whatever reason. Or they just really don't care anymore. They're suffering with depression. So we don't have time to go through tons of ways to correct these, but I want you to understand some of the reasoning, because that is the way that you find your problem. It's how you solve a problem. So the inability to reason and make their decisions, anger and frustration about not being able to bathe by themselves. So a few tips on that. Again, we want to plan ahead. Be aware of dangers that your loved one, if you leave them alone in the bathroom, what might happen. Falls are one. Razors that people leave in a shower, portable heaters sometimes that people have that could be turned over, lots of electrical things in a bathroom. So think through some of those dangers and get those out of the way so that there's not an issue there. Make bath time comfortable and safe. So having the temperature set at a very warm temperature, even though it may be hot for us, might make it comfortable for them. So try to create a spa-like environment. Sounds, if they sing in the shower, if they have sung in the shower in the past, put on some music that they might want to sing to. That's a distraction, but sometimes a welcome distraction. a warm towel. You can put towels in the dryer right before you go in there, and they'll stay warm, and that helps them when they're getting out. Decluttering the area, making sure that they're not things that they might slip and fall on, or so many things in the shower that they're overwhelmed. What should they be using to bathe? Just put shampoo, soap, a limited amount of things in that shower so they're not overwhelmed. And back to our keep it super simple. If it's brushing your teeth, beside them, that if that's what it takes to get them to brush their teeth, they'll watch you a lot of times and do what you're doing. Or if you're washing them, explain step by step. Okay, Dad, I'm going to wash your back now. Or I'm going to wash your leg, or whatever parts you're washing. Kind of tell them step by step. We need to wash your bottom because we need to use the bathroom. We want your bottom clean. So just do it very gently and explain to them what you're doing step by step. Respect your loved one. If they're embarrassed in front of you, even if you're their wife and you have been married for 60 years, it could be that all of a sudden they're embarrassed and you might need a male family member or caregiver to come in and help bathe them. So think about that. The other is keeping in mind lifelong routines. So if it's 5 o'clock and you've been trying to bathe them at 5 o'clock or get them to take a shower, if you stop and think back, when did they take a shower before they got sick, before they got to where they're at this point? If that was in the morning, then you might switch bathing into the morning. And that might solve a lot of your problem. And again, pick your battles. As far as bathing, bathing 2 to 3 times a week may be, adequate. People don't have to bathe every day. I have a friend who is a caregiver, and she calls it the airplane bath. She said, I have them clean under the wings and behind the tail. And she laughs about that, but her mom is one who understands that, and they laugh about it, and she lets her help bathe her in parts that need to be bathed. Think outside the box. If they've always showered, maybe you try a tub bath. Maybe if you can get them in and out of that. Think about things that you can put in the shower that will help them. That you can buy the grab bars that work with suction cups. You can put those around. That helps. If you're bathing them in a bath type environment, you might put tub toys in to keep them distracted. They might start playing with toys while you give them a bath. So think about different things that you can try in that situation. Next, we want to talk about communication. So, and that's something that we see a lot. That was the first sign with my dad, was that he, instead of talking a lot, got very quiet. A lot of times, our loved ones will get words mixed up a lot. They might not be able to, if it's a watch, they may not remember the word watch, and they, struggle for that. And they might say, the thing that keeps time. They could talk a lot more than they've talked in the past, which sometimes drives people crazy because it's a lot of repetitive talk, but it's part of the disease. So we have to figure out how to deal with that. So what are some of the causes and symptoms of communication issues? First of all, we want to rule out other possible causes: illness, medication, distractions. There could be dementia causes, their ability to think and make decisions, to focus, find the right words. That could be why they're not communicating. Symptoms: sometimes the meanings of words are lost. It sounds like gibberish, or they're saying things that really don't make sense. They can't follow storylines in books, TVs, movies. They have a hard time focusing on what people are saying. For my dad, frontal temporal affects that a lot. So to have people talking fast or multiple people talking, that processing time is very slow, and that causes him to be very quiet. He just won't speak because he doesn't know where they're at in the conversation or how to address that. Often they don't follow humorous comments. My younger brother and my dad used to joke all the time. It took my brother a while to figure out Dad did not get his jokes and was very offended by some of them. They may forget names, or people that they've had in their life for a long time, and they stop communicating or don't want to talk to somebody they don't recognize. And often they repeat themselves. That's one thing that many of us deal with. And they lose train of thought. That happens to a lot of us, but for them, it's a very real thing. They can't go back into a room and remember what they were going in the other room for, whereas a lot of us can do that. So tips on communicating. Plan ahead again. We want to, clear, easy to understand signs. Anything that they can read or is very simple, that might be an option of getting them to communicate, or something that is a picture base, like if they're not going to answer, do you want spaghetti or lasagna? Maybe you show them pictures of spaghetti and lasagna and they can point. Before you speak, we talked about this before, kind of get face to face on their eye level, and talk to them that way. Keep it simple. You're going to speak clearly and slowly, give them time to process what you're saying before you move on. After asking a question, give them a minute or more to respond. I drove my dad to a doctor's appointment. It was about a 30-minute drive, and the traffic on one of the roads we were on was terrible. And I said, Dad, this traffic's terrible. I should have taken another route, or we might do that on the way home. What do you think? And he was very quiet, didn't say a thing. And about 4 or 5 minutes later, he said, this is bad traffic, so, and then on the way home, he actually said this was a better way to go. So, it took him an hour to get that comment out, but he was thinking about it. So give them time. A lot of times we think they don't hear us, or they really don't understand what we're saying, but they do. It just takes them a while to process it and answer. Choose your words carefully. There was one example. I've got the workbook here, and there were some examples of, instead of saying, you got it, Dad, I might say, you're correct, Dad, because you've got it, Dad, could mean you've got COVID. So go back to very simple terms. That's right, Dad, or that's correct. Instead of saying, do you need to go to the bathroom? You might say, do you need to pee? That's very direct. Going to the bathroom is separate from needing to go to urinate, let's say. So think about how you can keep your questions very simple and very direct, something that they understand exactly what you're saying. Avoid starting comments with, do you remember? Because that makes them anxious to start with, and oftentimes they're not going to remember. Give very simple instructions one at a time, and show them respect again. A lot of people talk baby talk. Avoid doing that. Use very positive language instead of criticism. Remember, we could all be sitting in their seat one day. How do we want to be talked to? Do we want to be reassured and thanked for what we've done? And for my mom, a lot of times if she says, if she forgets something, she'll say, I'm so stupid. I don't know what's wrong with my brain. And I reassure her by saying, Mom, everybody forgets things sometimes. I do that too. And she goes, oh, okay, well, that makes me feel better. And we get past that. Use their name. People respond to that. They'll listen if you say their name. So use that often. And allow them to make simple decisions. That gives them some dignity and control. Even if you only offer them 2 options, let them make some decisions. One comment, I'll confess, my parents early on said I was taking over their life. And and it was what I was doing was very needed to keep them safe. But if I could have stopped and helped them, given them choices in that, it might have been better. And I've learned to do that. The next thing I want to cover is wandering or getting lost. And so a lot of times we find loved ones who run late coming back from an errand they usually run, or they're up wandering in the middle of the night. So, what are our causes of those things? Getting lost and wandering are a little different. Getting lost, it may be caused by their inability to focus or pay attention, or changes in their memory, not remembering a scene that they're, what they're used to as far as where the store is, where the stoplight is, we turn left at the school, those types of things may start, being lost. If they're depressed or distressed, they might get lost in that frame of mind, just not paying attention really. Wandering, these are some of the causes of that. Agitation, boredom, restlessness, those are the ones that I see most often, but a lot of times there's confusion about time and place. They're hurting somehow and they, are seeking some type of relief or help. Distractions or changes in a routine. My dad actually wandered out of the facility he's in at 3 a.m. once, and the attendant caught him at the door, or trying to get back in actually after he walked out. And he said, "You can't tell anybody, but I'm going to Washington, D.C. My brother inherited $8 million and we needed to get it invested." They brought him back inside. The next day when I asked him about going out, he said he was going out to check and make sure the work that the people did on the back of the house was done okay. And I said, "Did they do a good job?" And he said, "Yeah, it's okay." He had no recollection of what had happened before, but he made up something. So symptoms: getting disoriented on the way to familiar places, taking longer than normal to go a regular route. They don't remember arriving somewhere. They're having a hard time finding home when they've maybe lived there for years and years. Following directions, driving safely, like I said, is another long topic. But driving as a whole, if they don't know how to back up, turn right, turn left, get around obstacles, follow road signs, you've got a bigger problem. You need to make sure they're safe on the road. Another symptom is, that you're going to have problems if you don't already, is if they wear clothing outside the home that's inappropriate. And I see typos in my thing, and that is supposed to say time of day, season, or activity. So if they're in their pajamas wandering around out in the yard and that's not normal for them, be concerned. I have people who say, "Oh, well, my loved one doesn't wander yet." Well, you don't want the day that they wander off and get lost to be the day you say, "Oh, okay, well, they're wandering now. Let me prepare for that," because then it's too late. I've got the Silver Alert logo here, but there are several things tips on preparing in advance for the event that your loved one might wander. I would collect a lot of information, what they look like. Always be paying attention to what they have on. Create a checklist, share that with people. We have in the workshop, there's a sheet that is for exactly for that purpose, so that if your loved one wanders or gets lost, you have a page you can hand the police or whoever's searching for them, so they immediately know what their nickname is, who they might respond to, things they're afraid of, things like that, their height, their weight, all of that. Taking regular photos is important as well, because as we age, our looks change quite a bit. So putting a picture of your mother, to give a picture of your mom when she's 50 years old, when now she's 78, is not going to help the person searching for them. Identify triggers of wandering. One of the common things is having a coat or purse or keys by the back door. In their mind, they, for years, would put on their coat, grab their purse and the keys and go out, get in the car and drive. Having those things in place can really be a trigger for a lot of people. So I would remove those items from being close to the door. Installing alarms, different doorknobs, stop signs. I've got down here dark rugs outside the front door. As people's vision starts to fail, a black rug or doormat right outside the front door, if they open the door at that point where they've kind of, their vision starting to be impaired, and that part of the brain is failing, that looks like a hole to a lot of people in that stage of dementia, and they will not step outside the door because they think they will step into a hole. So a very simple thing that you might consider doing. There are also room monitors, bed alarms, things like that. There are tons of things. If you just search Amazon for dementia products, you'll see a lot of those. Alzheimer's Association does have a Medic Alert Alzheimer's Association Safe Return Program, and I'll give you a minute if you want to get this number, you can search for it online. But that number is 1-800-625-3780. A very structured program for when loved ones are lost. And then also in the state of Tennessee and in many states, we have the Silver Alert, which has been passed now and is in place. So if your loved one does wander or gets lost, call 911 and report that, and they will do a Silver Alert. Okay. I want to make sure we have some time for questions. Some of the other personality changes and behaviors, confusion, hallucinations, all of these, there are so many, and they are tied to different types of dementia. Quite often, my dad, I didn't know he had Parkinson's. He started having hallucinations. So, and that's a sign of Parkinson's. So there are all kinds of things that can be controlled with medication. Repetitive behavior seems to be one of the most common frustrating behaviors that caregivers deal with. It's a minor thing, but it does get to you after a while. So remember, don't correct, redirect, change the subject, start singing, take them to a new place, and hopefully that will help some of that repetitive behavior. So real quickly on defining problems, I was going to go through them. I think I want to make sure you've got time for questions. Think through when you have a behavior you're dealing with. Don't immediately guess what you need to do to change it. Think, what about that is troubling you? Why is it a problem? What effect does it have on you? How would you like it to change? Ask yourself questions to get as much detail as possible. When does it happen? Where? Who is there? Are there lifetime routines or experiences that are triggering that? And how often does it occur? There was an example I was going to give you, and I'll tell you real briefly. A lady who, her husband comes in the kitchen when she's trying to make dinner every night and wants her to come sit in the living room with him. Well, she gets very upset because she feels like if she doesn't cook dinner, they're going to end up eating cereal, and that's not healthy. She gets agitated, he gets agitated and starts throwing things on the floor. So if we go through the problem solving situation with her, the problem could be a number of things. It could be she likes that time away in the kitchen. It could be she wants to make sure they eat healthy, and that's so important to her that that's the problem. It could be that he is breaking things that she treasures. There are all kinds of problems, and so you want to think, what is it that's bothering you most about this, and work to get that solution. Think about what you tried in the past, set a goal. It may be we'll only have cereal twice a week, or different things, but try different solutions, practice those. See what barriers you have. I always tell people, stand back and say, what's working, what's not, and of the things that are not working, what do I have control over? And of the things that are working, can I do more of that? So measure your success and figure out your next steps. But sometimes it's back to that pick your battles. But if you have a constant problem, I would go through these steps to look at that. All right, questions. I'm going to refer to Tracy.
So far, we've only had one, Lori, and it's more of a medical
Okay.
question. So I'm not sure if you want to answer, if we might want to just, ask them. They probably need to have that conversation with their medical physician.
Okay.
Let's see. Can you see the chat box, Lori?
I'm moving over there now.
Okay. Rebecca said, my loved one has been bringing up sad behaviors that may have happened when she was young. I struggle between wanting to let her talk to learn more and redirecting.
I think a lot of times a lot of times they place themselves at a point in life, like they may be 82, but in their mind they're 32 and something's been going on. You have to meet them in that place at that age if they're thinking that way, and reassure them and kind of try to lift them out of that or find a solution. But sometimes letting them talk is good. You just want to comfort them. If you can't comfort them, redirect. And a lot of times they keep going back there, but sometimes getting up and walking, but that those are very real feelings. If they lost a family member at a certain age and they're back at that age, they're grieving. So you kind of have to let them go through that process, but then redirect them to something else. I think would be the best. Let's see. Any other questions?
And I'll go ahead. I went ahead and put in the chat box the AARP.org caregiving site. So I put a link there, and then give me 1 second and I'll hop over and get the link for our other caregiver cafe sessions as well.
And I actually have those on screen. Let me pull that up again. There they are.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So next time we're going to talk about building a care team for your loved one, which is important, and that encompasses a professional care team, but also a personal care team and other services. So I'm going to cover a lot of things that might make your life a little bit easier as a caregiver. And then in August, we're going to talk about managing stress and how do you take care of yourself through that, through your caregiver journey. So, all right.
And we had another question. In the beginning, at what point do you stop correcting them and start redirecting them?
As soon as you know you are dealing with dementia, in early stages, you might, gently correct them, or it depends on the situation. But, it took me a while because we had dealt with my dad for so long. When my mom started showing signs, it was hard for me to process that she was also having issues with dementia. But my life got a lot easier when I stopped trying to get her to be what I wanted her to be, and realizing that, she can't help it. So early on, as long as you keep everybody safe, people talk about, well, I don't want to lie to them. We call it creative truth telling. If it's something that they're getting upset about or keep repeating, saying, because sometimes they don't remember. If they say, I want to go to the store, just say, well, yeah, we're going to go this afternoon. I want to go to the store. Yep, we're going to go this afternoon. Well, before long, they've moved on to something else and they forget they want to go to the store. So, so that's one way to deal with that.
Great. That's a couple comments. Wonderful information. Thank you. Love the advice on keeping a journal. Great for long distance caregivers as well. We had a question. When is a formal medical diagnosis needed? When do you see a neurologist rather than a primary care physician?
Very good question. There are people who say you don't need a formal medical diagnosis, and in reality, it's very difficult for a doctor to give you a specific diagnosis. A lot of times, the family members are the ones who are seeing what's going on and figure it out long before their primary care physician. And at that point, at the point where you're starting to see more and more symptoms and you know that's what you're dealing with, I would explain those things to your primary care physician and ask for a referral to a neurologist, or a geriatric physician who kind of can control the whole picture. But that the only way there's a true medical diagnosis a lot of times is a PET scan, which is a very detailed scan of the brain. And, it won't do any good a lot of times to know that, but at least you know what type of dementia you may be dealing with. And by that, you might understand a little bit more about what's going to happen in the different stages. So that would be my thought. See another one. Is it common for someone with dementia to argue over everything? Yes, unfortunately, it is. I will tell you that for most caregivers that I know, there are phases. And there's a phase where they will argue about everything because what you're saying and what they're seeing and feeling doesn't line up. So that's always very frustrating to them. At some point, I just went through this with my mom. She is now kind of, sadly, a different phase of the disease, but she doesn't argue. She's more childlike. She's more lets me tell her this is what we're going to do and this is why. And I don't do it like her boss. I do it like her daughter, but she doesn't argue with what I ask. So let's see. I would, this one says a neurologist diagnosed dad with dementia but did not determine the type of severity. He just said for him not to drive. It appears to be mild. Should we see another doctor for more specifics? If the doctor is saying don't drive, I would take that very seriously. But I would go and get some more testing, so you're not left blind with just that one comment. You could ask for tests. Remember, you're the one in control as the caregiver. We'll talk about that in building your care team, but when you're talking with professionals, don't let them discount what you're saying. And if you don't understand what they're saying or want more information, ask for it. That's important that you as a caregiver do that because your loved one probably does not see what's going on. And it's going to be dependent on you to ask those questions. So it may not be that you necessarily need another doctor, although I would recommend if you're not working with a geriatric specialized physician, that you do bring in a neurologist or someone who can help with that because they can help you even if they don't do PET scans and detailed testing. You can tell them symptoms and they can help you down that pathway. So anyway, hopefully that answered your question. It's a difficult disease to deal with, and everybody's journey is so different that it's hard to give blanket advice, but ask lots of questions and take notes because it can get overwhelming. And if you can take notes, keep a journal of what's going on, then when you do meet with a doctor or a neurologist, you have something to go from. This is happening this often. We see this over and over. And that'll help them determine what to do next. You're welcome.
Great information. Yeah, I don't see any more questions in the chat box, Lori, and I want to be, conscious of your time and everyone else's time. We're getting close to an hour. I just wanted a couple takeaways. The keep it super simple, the KISS. I had not heard that before, so thank you for that. And don't correct and redirect. So that really resonated and stuck out to me. So those are the couple notes and key takeaways I want to take from today. But thank you again for your time and great information. I've posted again in the chat box for the link for everyone that they can see the next couple of sessions. So session 3 and 4 out of our 4-part series is coming up. So again, the first Tuesday of each month at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we will see you again next month.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Lori.
Mhm.